Welcome back to another episode of Adventures in DevOps. I'm Warren Parad, one of your fellow co-hosts, and today in the studio we're joined by Jillian yet again. Hello, Jillian.
Hello.
And you can see that Will is absent today. I think he had some critical problem yet again with his infrastructure that he's managing. But I'm looking forward to today's episode because we have with us as our guest Hikari Senju from Omniki.
Hello.
Hey, so maybe you could just give us a brief introduction about your company, what it's sort of doing, anything else particularly interesting.
Sure. So my name is Hikari Senju. I'm the founder and CEO of OmniKey. OmniKey uses data to generate more personalized ads and help businesses scale their advertising assets. So customers, oftentimes they're running ads on different advertising channels and they're looking to drive efficiencies in their advertising. And what we do is we'll train a model on the customer's brand information, we'll train on the customer's performance data, and then help them scale their creative assets for a variety of different dimensions, SKUs, to help them ultimately find 10x higher productivity in terms of their time, in terms of the cost and savings, and then ultimately in terms of the results.
Okay, that's a lot of things.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean yeah. Yeah, we call ourselves the Gen AI Command Center for brands that are looking to scale their digital advertising. So whether it's analytics or ideation, we really try to be that place, that control hub for customers to manage their online advertising presence.
What were they doing before AI stepped into this space?
Well, gosh, I mean, AI has been in advertising for a long time. The personalized content that you see recommended, um, you know, like deep learning before it was used for generating images and copy and content that you're seeing today was used for targeting personalized ads. And so what we're doing is we're just taking the next step, which is instead of just personalizing the content that's delivered to you, also personalizing the content itself.
So before it was mostly about when I see an ad on, say, Facebook or LinkedIn or on the top slot on Google, that content may have been using AI to generate the actual words or pictures that I see. But you're utilizing it in a more novel way within the product itself.
So before it used to be so there's the metric here is that 40% of marketing budgets are wasted on ineffective content. So oftentimes you're getting retargeted, the audience's experience where they're seeing the same ad over and over again. Ad fatigue. There's the lack of like effective content being bought and kind of distributed online. And what we do is when the content you see that actual image or that video, that content itself is personalized based on your interests and your needs. So it's not that you're seeing the same thing that's kind of broadcasted everywhere else, but you're seeing a personalized piece of content that's personalized for you just as much as your news feed is personalized for you today.
Well, I definitely don't think my newsfeed is personalized for me. I mean, there's a lot of things that show up there that I really just couldn't care about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still a work in progress. I mean, the algorithms are getting better every day, and it depends also on the platforms as well. But yeah, I mean, I think still, there's the personalization we see in social apps, and then there's kind of the lack of personalization we're seeing when it comes to the content itself, the advertising content that you see. And so, at the end of the day, if advertising content is more personalized and more effective at communicating what that brand and that company is trying to communicate, and you can make that kind of connection with that consumer in a more productive way, then that's better for the consumer because I'm not being targeted at random ads, I'm not seeing random ads, and then ultimately it's better for the business as well. And then for that business, it helps them with their sales.
so this is really interesting because I think in advertising, it seems like there's so many different angles that the AI could use, and like I don't know a whole lot about advertising, but just kind of off the top of my head, it seems like there's how the ad itself is being delivered. Like, is it on like Google or Facebook, or is it
Predominantly social platforms.
yeah, which social platform it's on, the audience it's being shown to, you have like age demographics. I get a lot of teenage girl things, which makes me wonder about the algorithms a little bit, but that's because I have a teenage daughter. And then there's also like the ad copy itself. So does your product help with all of those things, or one of those things, or like what is going on there?
Yeah, it focuses on the visuals. So the images and the video content that you're seeing, that's what we specialize in.
Okay, that's interesting. I did notice like a few years ago, or I don't even know when, but I noticed with Google, Google Ads started to have this new feature where they were like, we'll just train it and figure out where it should be. You just give us the ad copy and then we'll go set it out. So it seems like you're like on the other side of that. We're like, no, we're going to generate the actual ad for you, and then somebody else can distribute it.
Yeah, I mean, Google's been definitely an innovator in this space. We're going to actually limit how much control you have in terms of the content. You just give us your assets, and then we'll kind of mix and match it for you to make sure that the content is consistent in an omni-channel way, so that when a consumer sees an ad on Google, it is consistent with the ad they're seeing on Reddit or LinkedIn. Google is kind of communicating your brand one way, but Reddit's communicating your brand a different way. Then it's not very. It doesn't elevate the brand experience, and it doesn't create brand consistency. And so ultimately, this is really where managing your brand online is so important, is that you don't delegate the creation of your brand or the imagery of your brand to each platform, but you really can orchestrating that brand messaging yourself in our control hub.
So I think one of the things that advertisements have struggled for the longest time, at least from my perspective, is adequate personalization, more so than just like, hello, templated name and then generic repeatable message in the body, or an image that isn't very personalized. How are you getting over that hump? Like if the data wasn't ever good in the first place, like are you getting better data now to be able to generate personalized content? Or is it that we had the data all like the whole time and we just weren't using it effectively?
Yeah, I mean, there's an element where these platforms, for example, you could actually run ads like this, where it's, hello Warren, buy X product, but it would be too creepy, and it would actually result in you leaving the platform. And so they intentionally don't allow advertisers to do things like that, and they'll ban advertisers who do things like this, because the platforms themselves, maximize the engagement of the platform, and they're not trying to creep out their users and make it seem like they know more than they need to. And so that creepiness factor, is a kind of a pushback against like hyper personalization.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing here though is it's also just creative bandwidth. If you are brand and you have this is even like the biggest brands in the world, they may have thousands of SKUs. Creating content for thousands of SKUs across, and every single platform requires a different ad format. So Meta, Instagram, Reddit, LinkedIn, Snap, et cetera, they all require, videos or like horizontal or vertical content in different dimensions. And so it's just a lot of work. That's really where automation comes in, is that an AI can automatically create all those variations for all those SKUs for you. So in our platform, customers can just upload all their product assets, and then we'll create all the variations for you. A/B testing, inserting different SKUs, product SKUs, and also creating different output variations and dimensions.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're utilizing the filters or tags or attributes that your customer already has and how they're already personalizing or segmenting the market, and using that to feed into a model to generate the images based off of maybe each of their products. Whereas before, if I'm like one of the largest running shoe manufacturers in the world, I may just have one ad with just one shoe in it. Or maybe I have a couple different runners, so I have a couple of different shoes, but I can't have the same video with literally every single kind of shoe hyper targeted to some set of the market where would be more interested in that particular shoe.
That's exactly right. So this is really where generative AI comes in so handy, is because what we do is we can train a model on each product, on each shoe, and then generate images and videos, and I'm sure we're seeing this all online now, of people wearing those shoes and those variations. And we can do it very cheaply, like cents, generate those collateral and assets in cents with cents instead of, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars that would historically require to do a photo shoot like that or a video shoot like that. And so we empower personalization, and we increase personalization by lowering the cost of creating content and lowering the cost of advertising and lowering cost of creative. We also empower small businesses who historically wouldn't advertise or wouldn't advertise a lot to be able to do this. And I think there's been kind of a barrier to entry in some ways for advertising, but like by lowering the cost of advertising, you're empowering more businesses to be able to advertise sooner, connect with their customers sooner.
One of the biggest costs I was always under the impression of was actually getting the content out, like not necessarily creating the content, but once you have it, actually paying to get it in front of the right audience. And you're not necessarily changing that. You're just lowering the entry for the content generation side. Or is there something you're also doing for actually getting those clicks at a cheaper volume per price?
Yeah, maybe this year you'll have an AI agent do that for you instead of a person. So an AI agent will go and measure the click-through rates, for example, for every single platform, or the ROI, how much revenue is being generated in terms of sales from each advertising platform, and then adjust the bids and adjust the audiences autonomously, 24/7.
Okay, that's really cool. You did talk about training a lot. Maybe I want to get into that a little bit. I assume you're not building up new foundational models and maybe utilizing something that's already out there and either fine tuning it or building.
Yeah.
Are you building something from scratch? Like, what does that look like?
Take the best models in different domains and utilize it to help our customers deliver some kind of a solution. So for us, for image, like hyper realistic photo generation, we do fine tune on a pre-existing model. For us, we fine tune on as of today. This may change as these models advance, but today it's like a Flux model by Black Forest Labs, and that's how we generate hyper realistic imagery. And then we use a different model to turn that into video. We use a different model for predominantly OpenAI models for generating copy and creative briefs and tagging the ads. Well, we have an AI go and tag every image and video in terms of the elements of that creative in a more deeper way than just computer vision. So our first version of the analytics product was just computer vision, cat, dog, maybe cat drives more clicks. Now you can have AI explain the image in a much more nuanced, deep way. What is the persuasion tactic being used? What is the use of language, et cetera, and what kind of imagery is it in? And then we can turn those into features, creative features that we can then find trends in terms of what's driving more engagement or driving more clicks, and then communicate that to our customers. So we're using different kinds of AI depending on what part of the workflow that's being automated.
I don't know. The only word that I can think of it is, like some kind of boutique experience. So for example, I was on Amazon buying something and I noticed the pictures, there was like two different products that had the exact same pictures, and they looked like, I don't know if it was like stock photography or then they just switched out. It was like leggings. They switched out the pairs of leggings or not, but I was immediately like, I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is fake. I don't know if this is a real product. And I clicked right out. So I'm wondering, like, is there some type of kind of safeguard to make sure that everybody who has a pair of shoes is not getting the exact same image or even like very close to the same image? How you even measure something like that? How does all of that work?
Sure. So Amazon's interesting because a lot of their ads are just straight up product photos from the catalog, from the product catalog, and so and oftentimes you're just being targeted at those product photos and using the same product photo. Maybe it's like, this is, I don't know if there was two different companies or the same company. Maybe it's two different companies, like reselling the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I clicked off of it. I was like, I'm not going to get that. I'm going to go buy something that looks like a real product.
Right. And maybe, who knows, maybe they both got the same image from the manufacturer or something, right? And they were advertising with you. And just Amazon knew that you thought that you were in the market for this kind of product. We do have controls, and so we do have a human in the loop to really make sure that the content that's being generated is IP protective, so it's not infringing on anyone's copyright, brand safe, that it is aligned with brand guidelines. We actually have a separate model. When we train our language model, we train it on the brand guidelines of the customer. So generating content that aligns with the restrictions of that brand within their brand guidelines. And then we also have a human in the loop. So both at the kind of inception training of the model, we train on the brand, and at the very kind of human review step, we have there's no IP being violated, or there's no brand principle that's being violated.
Yeah, because fundamentally, it's still on your customers to validate the content that they're putting out is in line with what they actually want. I mean, obviously, you can assume that at a giant amount of assets, you no longer can have someone individually reviewing everything. So you must have things in place to help cut down on that. I think the custom trainings, custom models, multi-step evaluations, two-shot, helps a lot. But fundamentally, the customer is still responsible for and probably wants to validate that what they're getting out is actually accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a dashboard where the customers can provide feedback to the platform in terms of like, this is not right or this is right, and so we built this whole workflow for kind of review as well, because I think a large part of I think probably also a large part of AI going forward as well in different parts of the workflow is going to be some level of human review. I don't think anyone, even as we give it more, give AI more kind of control, there's going to be safeguards in place for human review. So it's really about how do you build a tool where it used to be that a human is doing all the work, and now a human is largely just babysitting an algorithm to do the work for you. And what are the review steps you put in so that a human can do that effectively and consistently get good results?
I mean, I think one of the challenges is previously, it wasn't just that humans were creating the original content. And I think this happens a lot in the software development space, where you may be using an LLM to generate lots of code to put up a bunch of pull requests. The amount of code is so high. The number of images or videos that you're generating is such a large amount that we fundamentally may have to actually change how we're evaluating and how we're actually reviewing the things that we're generating using LLMs.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really where I think automated tests come in handy. I think this is really where, this is kind of not necessarily what we do today in terms of our product, but synthetic data and kind of creating data to kind of make sure that you kind of testing against all these different edge cases is important, and having the proper evals in terms of evaluating the models, so the models being fine-tuned in the proper direction for the proper outcomes. Those are the kind of the things that come in play when it comes to, it's not just human reviewing the massive output, but kind of a systematic approach to fine-tuning and improving the models.
Yeah, I can see there are being a lot of value in that review platform. I'm curious. I think this question keeps coming up in any number of the communities that I'm in, of like, what's the best LLM or what's the best model out there, either to run with or to potentially retrain? Do you see them as like also interchangeable for the most part? Like there's one that's better today, but in 3 months or 6 months from now, it could be a totally different one. And have you oriented your tech or your business around that idea? Or do you feel like you're mostly bought into a single one for today and it would take a lot of work potentially to change in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thesis of our company, as soon as we found it, and in fact, we were actually the first company to present as a Gen AI company at TechCrunch, Disrupt, as a finalist on their stage. They had a similar question, which is like, like, why are you focusing on the application? Like, what is the strategy for focusing on the application level layer? Is there kind of you're seeding leverage to these foundation models and the best models providing kind of the space content? And the answer I gave then, I think the answer I give today hasn't changed, which is this technology is largely being commoditized. And there's a pressure for the commoditization of this technology because the innovations are open sourced. It was open sourced then, and it's open sourced even more today. There's massive competitive pressure by the big tech companies to develop innovations and make it cheaper and better and faster at like an incredible velocity, because it helps their cloud businesses largely. And so in order for powering their cloud businesses, they need to keep innovating in this space. So there's a financial pressure to do that. And so for us, we've always been, kind of plug and play in terms of what's the best model at any given moment. And we'll switch out models if, there's one model that performs better in a certain domain, and there's also that, and then I think the other element is just being transparent with customers as well in terms of what models we're using, because certain models have safeguards, other models don't. Certain models have, in terms of maybe their data protection might be, or there are various. Every model kind of has its own kind of unique quirks and nuances and issues, both legally and kind of in terms of the output and in the training. And so we're very transparent with customers what they're comfortable powering their advertising content with.
So you said that the written content is going into OpenAI's ChatGPT in some cases, right?
Yeah, I mean, OpenAI has APIs for accessing their foundation models, and so some of that. But there is a toggle you can use when you're using OpenAI, where you can ask to not train on the data that you're sending them.
Yeah, but your customers don't necessarily know that. So like, how do you? Is it like
Well,
transparent?
we do. So part of our terms is we're transparent with the customer in terms of which models we're using, and if we're sharing their data with any third party, and if customer is not interested, not open to sharing the data, then we will change the models. So or limit the functionality of the product. Play safe there. And actually, this was just going over a legal document yesterday on this with one of our customers. A lot of our customers are agencies, or advertising agencies, and they work with some of the biggest brands. And as part of an advertising agency working with a big brand, you have to indemnify and do liability protection and do all these things. Because obviously the big brand doesn't want to accidentally expose themselves in terms of data leakage or copyright violation through their agency. Sure. And so therefore that then is passed through to us in terms of that vigilance, to make sure that and so we would when it comes to therefore there's pressure for us as well to make sure that all those safeguards are being met, in terms of data protection, data leakage, and again, that copyright concern.
So if I'm like running a AI company, I'm not, but if I were, and we were using some other company's models, either through an API or a public model, do you see that there's a more common concern in a way? Like, is it, oh, we don't want you to train on our data? I've seen that one. I'm curious like how frequently that comes up. And then potentially, do you see requirements that there are certain companies you can't use, like certain companies are fine, certain models are okay? Or do your customers, they usually are like, they're using your product to do, they know they're using AI, they know they're using your LLMs that have been retrained from other models under the hood, and they generally are okay with that?
There's a lot of really interesting nuances here. Again, also some of these models that are open source, they're not a commercial license, so you actually can't commercially use these models that are open source. I mean, though the technology's out there and you can play around with it, but you can't actually use it for business because it isn't commercialized. You have to go and negotiate commercial license directly with the model provider, read the terms and conditions, make sure that what the safeguards are there. Again, it depends and varies depending on the model provider. You don't indemnify. You're at your own risk. Using these tools.
Has it been easy to work with the companies that are providing the foundational models to, like, they understand the enterprise risk, or has that been another level of a complex conversation to have both legally and what a support contract would look like in order for them to provide you the safeguards that you need so that you can promise your clients to meet their particular
I think it depends on the company. I think OpenAI is pretty, because they have a big enterprise business, they do a lot of this liability protection. But if it's like a startup that's doesn't necessarily have a large enterprise business and it's predominantly consumer, they don't really. I mean, for them, they're making enough money through consumer apps that. But yeah, these are areas where I think I mean, we've reached out directly with various companies and model providers and places that host these models to figure out the right terms. And
I know Jillian was really excited by the topic of AI whenever it comes up.
I am. Jillian, I'm always so happy about it. I could just like ask you questions forever and ever and ever, I think.
Well, this is your opportunity.
I know this. Don't worry, I'm going for it. I'm wondering, like, what is the kind of backend that you guys are doing? Since we are a DevOps podcast, are you using cloud? Do you have your own server farm? Like, what are you doing? And then also, if you're using, it sounds like you're using like the foundational models, but if you're using any custom models, how are you dealing with like hosting and deploying those? Like, just walk through your whole setup. What's going on?
our infrastructure is hosted on AWS. I can probably pull up a diagram. And
I mean, throw out some AWS service names here using like
okay.
SageMaker and Bedrock and
Yeah, I mean, we use a lot of those SageMaker. I think predominantly that we access through various other APIs. I'm not sure like how much of SageMaker we're using today. There's like an S3 bucket with all the media stored, the content stored. It's going to be we're almost like a DAM, a digital asset management tool for our customers, and so we manage all the customers' brand assets and all their generative assets as well. So that is quite a large part of the tool, and then we have load balancers that connect to Nexus, which is then connect to Postgres, SQL.
basically utilizing AWS infrastructure as much as possible for running your product.
But yeah, today it's we just kind of started with Amazon and they give us some nice credits.
I understand. That's how I got started with Amazon too, is they gave me money. So
yeah, exactly. They're very generous with those start credits. Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, they really are. They're good. If you keep harassing them too about like their new services, be like, oh, this new thing that you guys have, I think it will really transform my business, and then and then give you money.
They have great customer support when it comes to supporting startups and help. Yeah, I mean they've been great.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic that you've managed to figure out a way to put your models within Docker containers and are standing them up in AWS, because I know just as many companies would swear by needing to buy the GPUs and install them in local data centers, or whoever their engineers are, run them under their desks in order to be effective there, because they would complain that maybe the cloud is too expensive. And then the customers that are using or building models in even AWS are using the EC2 machines straight out and not necessarily containers, and then have sort of not great flows. I think there is this weird mix here where the companies that may have great models or great attention to what's going on in the AI space aren't so great at what is considered best practices from a DevOps standpoint. And it does seem like, at least as far as evolution goes in technology, like, you've made, I think you're further ahead than what most companies I talk to that are doing some sort of AI are at.
Well, that's really great to hear. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we also bought some GPUs ourselves and kind of playing around with them and experimenting with them ourselves. But yeah, I mean, I think the scalability is a lot better through these cloud providers. I mean, first of all, it's hard to get your hands on physically on say H100s, and then so it's a lot easier to do that through these cloud providers, and then just again scaling, deploying, and all these things also a lot easier through the cloud. So for us, like, we're not trying to make our lives harder. We're just trying to build the best application utilizing AI. So I usually have all the engineers focused on that, and there's just a whole level of complexity associated with setting GPUs and getting them properly set up and all this.
I mean, I am a little curious about the pipeline, which you may not have too much insight into, like the foundational model that you're getting from Flux.
Yeah, so there's a different couple of companies, model provider companies that support, say, the Flux model. So there's, we kind of experiment with many of them in terms of their speed and cost, and, the quality of the outputs. So there's a company called Replicate that's pretty good at this, and there's a company called Fowl. There's some other companies, and they have APIs.
What do the APIs do? Like, are you getting just the foundational model from them, and then you're retraining it in some way, or are you retraining it within their product? How does that work?
Yeah, so these APIs, there's many kind of parameters. So you have, say, the training images that you need to send to them. And so then we're generating hyper-realistic, say, images, based on product photos through those APIs.
This sort of brings me to something that I keep running into sort of theoretically, and I'm wondering if in practice you've actually seen some problems here. The models, from my standpoint, are quite different from each other from generation to generation. There's not really this concept that we have in software development of semantic versioning, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like
I feel like every model is like a different child.
Right, exactly.
Like it's like it has its own kind of quirks and nuances and likes and dislikes. It's like an API to this person. It's like with all the different, it's not like consistent output. It's not always like you have this input and it always has this output.
Well, I mean, forget even having consistency within the same model. I mean, cross, from one model to a different one, like you obviously have no consistency in a lot of ways. Is there some process you have for doing a validation when you actually do switch between, like, upgrade the model? I mean, there's some benefit, arguably, of the newer model. And so at some point you're planning on switching to it, or a company and the Flex model isn't exactly the same. Like, do you have like a standard process which you have sort of designed to deal with this problem?
Yeah, we like red team this, or like we have teams internally that test this, and just maybe really just test from every way from Sunday and make sure that the outputs are kind of aligned with with the experience we're trying to deliver for customers. And so we just do a lot of extensive testing ourselves before we kind of launch and get to our external customers.
Have you found any interesting problems as a result of that?
I mean, there's the standard kind of accuracy issues, and some models are accurate than others, and things like that. But also just that each model has like a unique personality in terms of the way they answer the questions, um, uh, and a lot of this is have to do with how they're trained. And so there's like kind of another variable dimension to consider when kind of integrating these models into your application. The back and forth, or kind of the trade-off between quality and maybe IP protection. Maybe the most IP protected or IP safe model is also therefore trained on very limited data, and therefore the quality isn't as good. While the best output in terms of quality also is very, actually it's very good because I think training data is somewhat or largely correlated with output, and the more data you have, the better the model. And so the better the model, oftentimes there's more IP risk.
I'm not even sure what else to ask. You covered an awful lot of ground, and it's all neat stuff.
I'm sure you've got some burning question. You don't want to walk away from this and regret later.
Not at the moment, but I'm sure that you're right. And then as soon as I walk away, I'm gonna be like, darn, there was all these questions that I had.
Well, just pretend the podcast is already over, and then start living that regret, and then maybe something will come to mind.
There we go. That could be it. Well, how many do you have, like a big team of data scientists at your company, or like how does that all work in terms of like not only infrastructure but also people?
We have 30 employees today. The majority are engineers, and I would say the majority of that is like machine learning engineers, data engineers, and kind of.
Is there, maybe this is getting too deep in the weeds, is there like a huge overhead cost and the spend for utilizing the models and running them compared to, say, running an application for customers that isn't so coupled to running a giant 10 gigabyte plus model and retraining it for GPUs? Or is it just mostly overhead, and after the model's been trained, the inference is much cheaper?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a kind of a scaling cost based on usage, but the the inference costs and the training costs are getting cheaper every single day. So I would not say that that's. I mean, I think it's definitely a sizable chunk of kind of, say, our cloud spend is things related to hosting these models and training these models and serving these models, but also those costs are going down, and our margins are, ultimately, for us and for most applications companies, what is the problem you're solving for that customer? What is the value providing? And for us, it's automated creative generation, scaling creative generation, and that value providing is substantially larger than the cost it takes to, do inference or do training.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. I think one of the things that's coming up in the future is the realization that we need smaller models that are more focused, that are working together with some sort of oversight that drives which model is being utilized and how that model is being utilized effectively. Are you already at that stage where you have multiple models that are being selected dynamically, or a model to choose other models?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have a model router. So, for example, if a customer wants to train clothes, that's different than trying to train other types of product photos. Or if they're trying to generate like hyper-realistic images of people wearing, say, because you're doing your clothing company and you have all these different SKUs related to clothing, that there's a specific model that's really good at generating images for that circumstance, versus, say, you want your defense company and you're really focused on utilizing a specific face for that's in the image, generated image or video. each one of these kind of use cases has a distinct model that's the best for it. And so we do model routing on our end to make sure we deliver the best outcome for our customers.
That makes sense. Do you, I mean, that for right now, I think is a huge innovation that a lot of companies aren't utilizing as much. They're utilizing the one foundation model that's coming from one of the major model providers, or even if they're training it themselves, they still only have one. I'm sort of curious, what do you think is next for the industry? Is there something specific that you already see as a huge challenge that needs to be overcome, or something? I don't want you to spoil anything internally that you're working on, but maybe you see something that like the providers that you're utilizing, you want them to do.
The question is how defensible of a business it is in terms of
Yeah, for
building a
sure.
business like this, because this space is moving so fast, and what's kind of an important service today may be completely integrated into one of these platforms tomorrow, or kind of commoditized based on some new innovation. And so you're definitely kind of building on like shaky ground, something, or like quickly moving ground. So in terms of but yeah, I mean, I think there is and there are companies that are focused on model routing and like trying to find the best models depending on and orchestrating the models depending on what the need is.
I think semantic standards there to be able to compare one model versus another one, know like fundamentally what the changes are, right? I mean, you may not be able to look inside the black box as you're building it, but afterwards you could do some sort of validation. And that validation process, I think would be important in order to do the seamless swapping that we talked about
Yeah,
earlier.
absolutely. I think a lot of it, like testing and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there's value in kind of human testing and kind of all there's reinforcement learning with human feedback is a big part of what makes these models better. And well, in order to do reinforcement learning with feedback, you need humans to provide feedback, and so there's a whole business associated with providing that. And so yeah, I mean, Julie, you mentioned earlier, like, the automation of jobs. Like, there's going to be many new jobs associated with this technology because, there's many new needs associated with this new technologies. Like, today I'm talking about digital marketing, digital advertising. I mean, this wasn't even an industry, 30 years ago. And so, like, new spaces are going to talk about, going to create new opportunities in new industries, and the economy will route people to where they're most productive.
I feel like I should ask, obviously your product itself has AI written into it as the part of the value offering. Are you utilizing any of the tools that help with the development process or organizational management within your company that are AI tools in nature?
Yeah, I think like meeting summaries and meeting recorders that summarize meetings. I mean, I definitely use these generative models for writing emails, writing product specs, writing blog posts, writing kind of documents. I mean, I think a large part of leadership is communicating and writing documents and kind
Definitely.
of aligning on strategy. I use Gen AI tools. Gen AI Deep Research is really cool to do research, like competitive research. Who are the leading companies in this space, and what are the unique edges, and what is our unique advantage versus those companies. Create a chart for me that does this, and write a report for me. Yeah, and then I think our engineering team uses Cursor and some of these other tools for like helping with their engineering and helping be more productive in terms of engineering. So yeah, I mean, there's AI kind of embedded throughout our application, but also internally as well. We're using AI to improve our productivity and do the work that maybe a couple of years ago you needed 10 times a lot of people do. Now it can be done.
I'm right there with you on the meeting notes being generated. That might be like one of my favorite features of AI, is not having to write those things myself anymore.
We have all these customer success calls, and they're recorded. And I'm not going to watch all those video recordings, but I will read meeting notes of all our customer meetings. That's so much more doable now. With people will actually write good summaries now about the meetings, and then now I can read them and read more of them, and I can make better decisions. And so
I just always find it interesting how like the internals of a company who is innovating in the space is innovating internally as well. I see there's like a lot of duality there, and I always question when I see a company that's trying to innovate in the product space and they still have a very legacy or waterfall mindset internally. But it's really interesting. You said, oh, we are using all these tools in some way, or we're trying them out and seeing what the productivity boost is. That I think is a really great sign that it matches the mindset of what your product offers is matched internally with how you're thinking about the culture of your team and the direction that you've set.
Well, yeah, Warren, you say a really interesting point, which is, for example, Amazon, like AWS, was on Oracle servers until like fairly recently. Like the innovator sometimes is, dependent on a legacy stack to do the innovation, and some of these legacy players have humongous, lock-in, and so. Yeah, I mean, thankfully, we benefit as being a startup, so we're building a lot of this infrastructure from scratch, and so we can pick the best tools. But once you have a team that's kind of like you built all this infrastructure around like a certain structure, like just a certain set of tools, it's really hard to kind of switch over, and it's just a massive engineering effort, and so like I think this is really where I think there is an advantage to being a startup today, is because you kind of a company ultimately is is just people and the efficient organization of people to deliver a superb product, and AI is all about people ultimately being more productive, and so we can reimagine corporate structures more radically, and kind of this kind of original kind of hierarchical org structure may not make as much sense anymore as well, with all these new capabilities that are available.
Kari, maybe if there's anything that you still wanted to share that you didn't have the chance to, now's your opportunity.
Well, no, I mean, thanks for the opportunity, and please sign up for a demo on our site, omniki.com. Please, you can also try the product out for free, and yeah, I mean, thanks so much for having me, Warren and Jillian. It was really a pleasure with you.
Well, then we still have to do our picks for the episode. Can't leave those out, or else Will come back and complain. So, Jillian, what did you bring for us today?
I think since we're talking about AI, I'm going to do some shameless self-promotion. If you go to my website, dabbleofdevops.com/AI, I'm putting the page back up, and I'm going to just put a whole lot of disclaimers about how AI can't do absolutely everything for you. You do still need to have the human in the loop, like we were talking about today.
Jillian's the human in the loop.
I am quite often the human in the loop, and I that allows data science companies to have a self-hosted kind of platform in which they can do a lot of data discovery. I have a lot of data sets that are already up. We have open targets. We have some data from the single cell website that of course escapes me at the moment, and a couple of other data sites, some PubMed queries, all that kind of thing. So if you're a data science company and you want to do some data discovery with AI, sign up. It's all hosted on your infrastructure. I never see it, and I never touch it unless you actually ask me to.
That's awesome. We'll definitely check it out. So could you remind me what the URL is? It's Dabble with.
I had a bit of an issue where people were signing up and they thought that like it was going to do absolutely everything for them, and then I had some unhappy customers, and I don't like unhappy clients.
Well, unhappy customers is better than no customers, though. So
I mean, not in the long run, not really. It's easier to start off with
you're right.
Happy customers than it is to have unhappy customers who then tell other customers how unhappy they are.
Brand identity and reputation is certainly very important. But I also say if you have no customers, that getting some unhappy ones at least gives you some feedback on what you can improve.
I know, but I got the feedback on what to improve.
The feedback was don't have the website up, so you took it down.
Yeah, so I took it down until I could work on the feedback a little bit.
This is, I think, the fundamental challenge in business, with startups is, right, you have to get out something complete. Like if you're not, there's that famous word, it's like if you're not embarrassed by what you've launched, then you've launched too late. But at the same time, you have to focus on the customer. You have to focus on an ideal customer. You have to say no to certain customers that you don't that's not really the target customer at the moment.
The startup advice as build for what your ideal customer needs, is really what companies have to be doing. And I think that's been heard. I think the thing that now needs to be heard is that the people you're talking to may not be your ideal customer, and your ideal
Oh,
customer may
absolutely.
be someone that only exists months or years from now, and it's okay to build for them. But then you have to ignore advice from everyone else who isn't actually your customer, because then you're not building for, the future realistically. Oh, thank you,
Yeah,
Jillian. My
guys.
pick today is going to be Dune by Frank Herbert. I absolutely love the science fiction book. I think it was one of my first science fiction books that I read. And, it just compared to other things, there's just such a level of attention to detail and innovation in writing about science fiction that I just don't think really existed before Frank Herbert.
I'm gonna go with this book called Accelerando by Charles Stross. Um, and it's really about kind of the acceleration of human progress. And it's really interesting. Like each chapter starts with like the MIPS for humankind, like million instructions per second, and as AI advances, like the MIPS, the collective MIPS of humankind also accelerates. And initially most of the million instructions per second, a lot of it is human brains, human computation, but towards the end, it's like it's mostly just AI and the massive compute power that AI is providing. But through this massive power, you're building Dyson spheres from the sun and like just exploring the galaxies. And so I think it's like a very optimistic book on what this technology can provide for us. And it is. I do really like this book.
Well, then that's everything. Thank you to our audience for attending, and thank you to Hikari for being on this episode and sharing with us how OmniKey is innovating in the AI advertising space.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks.
Warren. Thank you, Jillian. Thank you.